In this video, I want to talk about change and the fear that many people have surrounding that, as well as abandonment and new sort of opportunities, and the idea that can kind of provoke a lot of fear in us, and struggling to adapt to that is something that a lot of us can have a difficult time doing. So let's go. The main reason why I'm making this video is because change is something I've kind of always been a little bit intimidated by, at least the idea of doing so. I have lived in the same house since I was 2 years old, and before then, obviously I couldn't remember, but I didn't live very far away from where I have essentially my whole life. And so I never had to adapt to moving somewhere new and having to meet tons of new people. And what that kind of does, and first of all, that's obviously something I'm grateful for because it's nice, it's a privilege to have the same home. But what that can sort of do is get you very comfortable being in a certain place. And the idea of having to call somewhere else home, or a new environment, a new place, your livelihood, it's not easy. In life, there is sort of this metamorphosis process. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially where the caterpillar grows into the butterfly or becomes the butterfly. And this is where you kind of lose that initial shell and your wings are now being spread. You know, you're now willing to fly and you have all sort of colors being presented to the world. Transformation is a huge theme to a lot of our lives, to pretty much everyone's life, because we go through so much. I mean, when you think back to who you were even just 6 months ago, you might have some similar traits. There might be things and aspects and components to your life that are relatively the same, but you probably also have different perspectives on some things. There's probably also other routines that you've adopted. You've bought some new things. Maybe you've met some new people. And this is the thing, is that we're constantly evolving and changing and adapting and adding on new wisdom, garnering that knowledge, the experience through each of our endeavors. Even if you are in the same place, like even if, you know, for someone like me, living in this same environment my entire life, I've still had to adapt to all sorts of new changes. When I think back to who I was 4 or 5 years ago, and heck, even like 2, 3, sometimes even 1 year ago, it's vastly different. Because first of all, I'm very young, and so going through all these phases of trying to find who I am and learn more about life and what I want and who I want to be and what I want to do, who I want to be with, it's such a process of revelation, of questioning your past beliefs, the notions that you've held, and learning how to adopt new ones. It's such a fascinating experience being human, and we grow attachments towards certain things, towards a place, towards a person, towards an activity. And you don't like the idea of shedding that skin, of letting go and inviting in new. And that's why we can grow a little bit complacent and comfortable at times. It's so necessary to go through change. And the thing about it is it very much is an uncomfortable process. And you have to face that challenging time period. And the one thing that I've realized through my life is that if I'm going through some level of pain or discomfort or emotional instability, so to speak, for a period of time, it quite literally is just a period of time. It tends to dissipate. You know, it tends to heal if I am patient with it, if I'm willing to also handle and uncover the root of my emotions, which is something that is very vital for a lot of people. I mean, think about where you live right now and who you have with you, and the life that you're living, the job that you have, and imagine if all of it were stripped from you. But let's say, you know, you were given a different foundation. You moved somewhere else, you met new people, you had a new job and all these sorts of things. That would be very weird, very awkward at first. And it's so natural because we adapt. We are creatures of habit. And we wake up, there's things that we subconsciously will do without even thinking about it. So the only time we acknowledge these things is when our toothbrush is placed in a different spot, is when our dog wakes up in a different spot. That's when we start to pick up on these things, at least at the conscious level, when things are evolving and altering and are different. When you're going through that discomfort for a period of time, and whether it's through a relationship, maybe you met someone new, or maybe you are going out and exiting a relationship and trying to grow accustomed to being single and deal with that feeling of just sadness, heartbreak, whatever it is, trauma, that discomfort is so necessary. And it's difficult in the moment to understand that it's going to ultimately help you in the long run. But that's why I feel like in life you have to have a bigger picture mentality in a sense. Now, obviously, you focus on the little things, you prioritize what matters to you, but you also have this outlook on the long run, right? And how the storm, as cloudy, as rainy, as awful as it might be, and daunting as it can be to face and deal with, it's so necessary, right? You have to face a level of chaos, darkness, and instability at times to understand what the opposite is like. I've always had this sort of feeling that for some people out there, and it could be because of their environment they grew up in with their parents or their guardians, maybe it's just the people they were around in terms of going to school, where they lived, where they grew up, and how they were essentially raised, that they can kind of have this idea that you have to be very uniform as a human being, and you don't want to show any emotion or express that. And what this does is it alienates us. It creates this idea in our mind that we're very weird, that we're different, that we're, like I said, alien and foreign to everybody else, because when we see someone we like, we feel a sense of butterflies within, right? Because when something bad happens, we have a reaction that prompts tears or sadness or whatever it is. And it's all so human, right? That's the thing that I am really uncovering at this point in my life, is that every emotion that I go through, there is such a divine reason behind that grants me a level of humanity. And when dealing with change, it's okay to be afraid or intimidated or insecure or uncertain and feel imbalanced, because that's what allows you to be just human, just you. And I mentioned in the beginning of this video the fear of also abandonment, which can kind of be intertwined in change. And abandonment can be something like heartbreak or being ghosted by someone. It can just be being cut off or led astray. That can leave you scarred, in a sense, with this negative attachment towards love, affection, and convince you may be unlovable. This is somewhat of a subconscious notion that I've held at times in my life, is that, oh, I was ghosted by someone, so there's something wrong with me, right? And I may not say that consciously, I may not say that outwardly, but there's just this feeling in the pit of my stomach. And I know it sounds a little bit cliche, because people say this quite often, but you really do have to find ways to show that love towards yourself. And it can be very small things, yoga or going to the gym or talking to someone that you love and having an open dialogue. It can be meditating or writing down or reading or having a cup of coffee. It's these little things that, like I said in the beginning, we only recognize them when they're gone, right? Or when they're moved elsewhere, when they're misplaced. But I find it important to acknowledge these little things, to wake up and, hey, I'm here having this conversation on my phone. I have this phone. I know it seems so commonplace to have this phone because everyone does, but you never know what could happen, right? Maybe I am walking one of these days and it slips out of my pocket and it, it shatters and I have to get a new phone and I'm without one for a little while. And that's just the impermanence of everything. And it's very fascinating, right? Like, because you get so attached, you get so fixated on the idea that this is just here. But quite frankly, I believe having some form of a gratitude list is so key. Like, I like to write down, and I'm not perfect with it. I'm not saying that I do this all the time, but I like to occasionally write down the things that I'm grateful for. And that goes for friends, that goes for family, that goes for job, that goes for life. And at times, even though they suck, the stormy days, the rainy ones, those dark times that really can quite honestly suck. It's not fun, man, but it really is what allows that light to shine that much brighter. And that's why I'm saying, when you're going through that, when you're in the midst of it, you just can't lose sight of the fact that this is actually a necessary part of your process and growth as a human being. The idea of moving out of my house that I've lived in my entire life is certainly a little bit intimidating. I'm not just so willing to do that with complete confidence and being assured that I'm going to be perfectly fine and it's not going to be a difficult process. No, man, I understand that doing so will be a challenge. It's a necessary step. It's intimidating, but it's important for the long term and just for my growth as a person. Doing so, I know, is not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of courage. It's going to take a lot of emotions and facing those emotions and those attachments towards what I've always considered to be my home, but it's something I'm going to have to go through. Our lives are meant to be lived. They're meant to be experienced. And if you have something that you want to do, something that you're passionate about, something that's been on your mind, then go out and try and make it happen. There's no real excuses. Like, you only have so much time on earth and in this life, and we keep waiting for tomorrow or the stars to just perfectly align. And hey, I will say that there are times in which they do. There's a lot that's out of our control. But if we want something, then we also have to control what we can to make it happen. And that is effort, that is action, that is taking initiative, which quite frankly, a lot of us can struggle with. No matter what it is you're going through, because I know that we all deal with depression, we all deal with anger, fear, sadness, maybe even the void of feeling, right? I'm sure a lot of you can probably understand where I'm coming from with that, just feeling empty, not really anything. And that's kind of a scary place to be, because sometimes when you're sad or you're afraid, you at least know why it's the case, but occasionally we just feel empty and nothing's really there and we don't know exactly why. It's kind of just in this gray space and this void of just complete nothingness. And that can kind of turn you nihilistic at times. But regardless of where you're at, I encourage you to go a little deeper with it. Take it a step further and ask yourself, okay, well, and I'll start with fear, right? All right, the first, most logical question is, what am I afraid of? Why am I afraid? Is there something about this fear in particular that I have a negative attachment towards and that is causing me to be so perplexed and so intimidated by taking that action and confronting whatever it is? If you are sad or you are depressed or you're dealing with some kind of just internal struggle, then maybe you can ask yourself, like, why? Is there something that it is that I'm doing? Is there someone in my life that I feel this attachment towards, but maybe I'm losing sight of? Sometimes with relationships that can be the case. But you have to unlock it and open those doors to asking the questions of why and where and when and how and what. And that's essential, and I encourage anyone watching to do that. I also thank you guys for tuning into this video, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts, comments, and what you think about this topic. So feel free to let me know, and Will from Shadow Ascent, signing out.